Yo YouTube, it's past 10 in the morning. I'm here with another video just after a couple hours of uploading the last one. I am here to talk about the two-party system and why we live in a two-party system. Okay, and why you should vote outside of the two-party system, and why the political system is the way it is basically what I already said, why we're living under a two-party system. You see, the reason the system is set up with two parties is because when you only have two parties that project two different points of views, mainly two different points of views, you then have it to where the rich people, the lobbyists and the bankers and all them, they only have to buy out a couple of candidates instead of buying out candidates from multiple parties. That's why they don't want anything more than a two-party system. That's why the corporate elite does not like third parties, because they don't want to have to fund us. They don't want to have to fund us. They want to only have to fund Republicans and Democrats so that it's simple for them, and every once in a while an independent that has in-between points of views. They don't want to fund the Constitution Party or the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or the American Reform Party. They don't care about any of us. They don't care about the Justice Party. They don't want to fund anybody that's from any of the third parties other than possibly independent every now and then. Most of the time they don't even want to fund independents. You see, when they have two parties, it makes it easier for the lobbyists to only have to buy out so many candidates. It makes it so much more simple. That's why the system is set up the way it is, and that's why it's controlled the way it is. And that's why we need to stop voting Republican or Democrat, because a vote for the Republicans or the Democrats is a vote for the corporate elite. It's the truth. Instead of voting for the lesser of two evils, we need to vote for who we think would best represent this country. The people that represent you are bought and paid for to keep you stupid. That's just simply the truth. They are bought and paid for to keep America stupid. They want us to think on the level of children. That's exactly why we need to vote outside the system. We need to vote for people that the lobbyists do not want to fund. You see, you notice when you look at our system, the presidency, the vice presidency, all the other positions in the president and vice president's staff and the secretary of state, and also the Supreme Court justices, everybody in the executive or judicial branch is always a Republican or a Democrat, and everybody in the legislative branch is always a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. You never have anybody from a third party other than the independents get into Congress, and you never have anybody from a third party, period, that gets into executive or judicial branch. And it's designed that way for a reason. It's designed that way because, like I said, the corporate elitists don't want to fund all these different parties. I want you to sit here and listen to me for a second. Not for a second, but you know what I mean. I'm going to talk about the last couple of presidential elections and who's funded who. Going all the way back to the 2000 presidential election with George W. Bush and Al Gore. You see, George W. Bush, in the 2000 presidential election, companies like Microsoft lobbied to George W. Bush. And then companies like Viacom lobbied to, what's his name? Al Gore. I have a hard time remembering Al Gore's name because you don't hear much about him anymore. But companies like Viacom to Al Gore, companies like Microsoft to George W. Bush. Well, Microsoft also later on in some of the later on elections after Bush, maybe even the one where he ran for a second term, they started lobbying to Democrats. But they also lobbied to George W. Bush back in 2000. So the same people lobbying to both Republicans and Democrats. Now Viacom usually lobbies to Democrats, but I'm just talking about how many different companies lobbied. And now I'm not going to be able to name off all of them. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. Let's look at the election between George W. Bush and John Kerry. In that election, Bank of America lobbied to both George W. Bush and John Kerry. They lobbied to both of them in the same election. Now, they may have given more money to one than the other, and I think they did, but they lobbied to both of them. Isn't that kind of strange? As far as I know, Bank of America also lobbied to John McCain and Mitt Romney when they ran against Barack Obama. Now, let's look at Barack Obama. Google lobbied to Barack Obama in both of the elections that he ran in. And in the second time that he ran, Disney and Time Warner also lobbied to Obama the second time that he ran. Now let's look at the election. Oh yeah, and another thing I forgot to mention about George W. Bush and John Kerry. They both went to the same college together, and they're both in the same Skull and Bones Lodge. They're in a secret society. Both of them in the same lodge. So either way, you were voting in a Skullsman. But let's look at Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton got money from people like George Soros. George Soros is the one that's in charge of all this GMO food stuff. George Soros basically puts the GMOs in the food. GMOs cause you to get cancer later on in your life. They cause people to get to where they can't have kids. It does all kinds of stuff to you that's not good for you. And it's put in a lot of our food. Like if you ever see something that says produced with genetical engineering or partially produced with genetical engineering, that means that it's genetically modified. And that means that it comes from the company that George Soros is in charge of. Or rather that that company is involved with that other company putting that into the product. And it's very unhealthy for you. Well, he lobbied to Hillary Clinton. And I remember how much money he put into her campaign. It was $7 million. That's how much money George Soros put into Hillary Clinton's campaign. Now let's look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't get any lobbyist money, but back in the year 1990, Donald Trump got a bailout from the Rothschild family. The Rothschild family is one of the 13 families of the elite. And they're one of the most wicked families on the face of the earth. In fact, Donald Trump's bailout, now it didn't come directly from the Rothschilds, it was indirect. Wilbur Ross was the one that gave Trump the money. Trump was in debt because he was having trouble paying off the casinos that he had bought. And Wilbur Ross was the senior manager at Rothschilds Incorporated at that time, and he bailed Trump out. He worked for the Rothschilds family at that time. Well, now Wilbur Ross is working a position in the United States government. But the Rothschild family, during World War II, the Rothschild family gave money to the Allies and Hitler. They gave money to both sides of the war. They loaned money to both sides. And they claimed to follow Judaism, but yet they funded Hitler in World War II. And that's the kind of people that bailed Trump out in 1990. So for Trump it was a bailout, and for all the other politicians it was lobbyist money. So all of them are bought out by the corporate elite. There's no way around it. Now for a second, I would like to take a look at a third-party candidate. Now usually in a presidential election, like I said, third-party candidates never win. And usually they're not controlled because the corporate elite doesn't want to waste their time buying them out. But another one that's important to look at that I think would be, and it's not an exception, but I think is controlled by the elite is Evan McMullin. Evan McMullin was the independent nominee in the last presidential election. He was, and this is kind of strange. He ran as a conservative independent, so he was like basically to the right, really conservative guy. And you noticed in the last election there was the Never Trumpers. Okay? And Evan McMullin came out as a conservative that was against Trump on the independent party. And he was supposed to be in the CIA right before he ran for president. That's kind of fishy. Why would someone from the CIA run for president as a conservative against Donald Trump right when the Never Trumpers are going crazy? Another thing to note is that in just about every presidential election, I'm sorry, my dog went off, started barking at something. In every presidential election, a lot of times the U.S. government has given money to the candidates. So, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch if someone from the CIA running for president was controlled by the United States government. It really would not. So I kind of wonder with Evan McMullin. I'm not saying he is or isn't, but I think he is an elitist. Usually a third-party candidate's not going to be in the elite. But sometimes, every once in a while, every once in a great moon, you'll have one that is an elitist scumbag, just like the Republicans or Democrats. But that's the important thing to think about with Evan McMullin is why is it that someone that was in the CIA runs for president as a conservative independent right when you have the conservative Republican Never Trumpers? And an independent is supposed to be someone that's in between, on points of views, in between Republican and Democrat, but yet he ran as a conservative independent. And here's the thing. Excuse me. The reason that he would be the best choice for someone that is a conservative that does not like Trump, hardcore conservative that doesn't like Trump, okay? Well, if you go look at the other third-party candidates, if you look at the other ones, Gary Johnson has mostly conservative ideas, but he has some liberal ideas. So he would not do well for a conservative person that's strictly conservative. Jill Stein, third-party liberal. She would not do well for someone strictly conservative. The Justice Party nominee would be a third-party liberal. Also would not be good for a strictly conservative. The American Reform Party is in between conservative and liberal. So that would not do well for someone that's strictly conservative. And then last but not least, the Constitution Party, even though they're basically strictly conservative, the nominee for the Constitution Party in the last election was not even on the voting, where I live at least. He was not even on the ballot where you could vote for him. You had to write him in. So he was not popular enough. Evan McMullin was popular enough to get on the ballot. I know he was on the ballot where I live. You could check mark Evan McMullin for president. But Darrell Castel was not on there. So we know that Evan McMullin would be the best one for them, not only because of his popularity, but because he's strictly conservative. So that kind of makes me wonder about Evan McMullin. I apologize for my dog making the noise earlier. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. As always, this is Caleb from Constitution Party Caleb Talks. And before I go, I'd like to say power to the Constitution, and I will see you guys in the next video.